Jim Dandy here, full dress. This is how I look when I go out to the restaurants, markets, places with a lot of people. I want to show you something. My next video is going to be my last one for a while, and you're going to be dynamite. It's going to be dynamite. I want to show you my book. I just first printed up about 2010, 29, somewhere around there. This one here was Catherine Lynn O'Kelly. Picture of my daughter. She was taking lessons in modeling school, and then she took the shot and ended up like that. Here's one, I had a picture of her, Frankenstein Science book. Picture of Frankenstein on there. That was kind of clever. This one here, you can see it. Picture of Raggedy Ann. Issued on June 14th, 2010, this copy I made. The virus vaccine making machine to centrifuge. Virus that never was the name of this book. Here's Frankenstein Science in a cartoon. Two women getting shots. And the plain looking woman got the shot in the arm, and the Buxumi woman got it in the butt. Tells you what the doctors are like. Here's a book I put together about 15 years ago. It's got Paul Bragg, P. L. Clark, J. Tilden, and Herbert M. Sheldon. And these books are the ones I got today. The modern book, Shots of Truth, Real Science, a Conspiracy Exposed. They conspired against us. We weren't the conspiracy. They were. Anti-Vaccinators Bible. These books are the same, by the way. The titles are different. I'm having trouble talking. I got these new teeth. So hopefully you can understand me. I want to tell you what I do when I go out. I got my shirt on, anti-vax shirt. I got a book. And I go to a restaurant. I lay this on the table like that. And I got these cards. Business cards, shotsofTruth.com, Jim Dandy the Healthologist. My email, and visit Amazon to copy my book. On the back, I stamped my Facebook page. Look up Jim Dandy on Facebook with a picture of a lion. I lay these down like this on the book. I take off my jacket. I'm having my soup or whatever I'm eating. And somebody comes up and compliments me on my shirt. I say, okay, find out how deep they are into this, talk to them a little bit, and I give them one of my cards. That's how I recruit people locally. So I just wanted to show you that. Now we're going to play this, and I'm going to tell you something, people. If you don't know what a centrifuge machine does, or an electron microscope, you might as well get out of the game, because just copying somebody with one line, it's not going to do you any good. You got to know what these things are. So the centrifuge electron microscope, and don't forget, tomorrow I'm going to have my video of Paul Offit, done somewhere around 2010, whenever he did his book, Deadly Choices, how the anti-vaxxer threatens us all. After I read his book, I came out and I talked to him on the phone. And you'll hear him, how he lies right to your face. He's bold. Anyway, here we go. Let's see if I can get this going. Okay, here we go.
All right, in order to fully understand better the lie of the so-called living virus
March 6th,
and how they pull that off, you'll need to better understand the function of the electron microscope in a machine called the centrifuge machine. So I'm going to explain exactly how these things work, just in case you're not aware of this. The electron microscope and its function. Electron microscopes are capable of revealing details as much as 1,000 times smaller than visible in light microscopes because the wavelengths of electrons are much shorter than those of light. Transmission electron microscopes make it possible to explore cell structures and large protein molecules. Because beams of electrons can pass through thin samples, cells and tissues must first be cut into ultra-thin slices before they can be examined under a microscope. With scanning electron microscopes, a pencil-like beam of electrons is scanned over the surface of a specimen. For images, specimens do not have to be cut into thin slices to be visualized. The scanning electron microscope produces scanning three-dimensional images of cells. Because electrons are easily scattered by molecules in the air, samples examined in both types of electron microscopes must be placed in a vacuum in order to be studied. As a result, researchers chemically preserve their samples first and then remove all the water before placing them in the microscope. This means that electron microscopes can be used to visualize only non-living preserved cells and tissues. Now, I don't necessarily understand about electrons and all that mumbo-jumbo they're talking about, but it's easy to understand the main part, the meat of this article, that anything they're seeing under electron microscope is dead. It doesn't grow, it doesn't attack, it doesn't mutate or multiply. This is the lie we have been told since the 1930s when they invented the electron microscopes. Okay, now you understand clearly that there's no such thing as a living virus, because every time you see a picture of a virus, it's going to say it's seen under an electron microscope. Now let's get into the centrifuge machine. This is what the New World Encyclopedia says. A centrifuge is a piece of equipment, generally driven by a motor, that puts objects in rotation around a central fixed axis, applying a force perpendicular to the axis. The equipment consists of a fixed base and a rotating component called a rotor that holds the objects or samples to be spun. The spinning action, called centrifugation, subjects the samples to forces that far exceed the force of gravity. In general, a centrifuge is useful for separating materials in certain types of mixtures. If a liquid or solution contains materials of different densities or widely differing molecular weights, these materials may be separable by using a centrifuge. For example, a centrifuge may be used to separate cream from milk. Listen to this closely. Or to separate biological cells or virus particles from a suspension in a liquid. A household washing machine acts as a centrifuge during the spin cycle when the liquid water is separated from the solids, which is clothing. Now in Audio 1, we talk about Thomas Rivers, the bad guy, who convinced the whole medical profession that the virus was the cause of human disease. Here is a statement from the Rockefeller University called The Birth of Modern Virology. It says in the 1920s, virology was not an established discipline. Although researchers could study the effects of viral diseases in humans, animals, and plants, they had no criteria to describe viruses chemically. In fact, the very definition of a virus was subject to debate. The best scientists could do was to say that if an infectious agent passed through a fine porcelain filter, remember that was Martinez-Beijerinck, that held back bacteria, then it was probably a virus or a filterable agent. Here's the important part. In 1926, Thomas M. Rivers, 1888-1962, director of the Rockefeller Hospital, made a bold statement about the essential nature of viruses that set the course of virology for decades to come. Now, this isn't a bold statement, this is an absolute lie. He said viruses appear to be obligate parasites in the sense that their reproduction is dependent on living cells. That he took from Martinez-Beijerinck, that something inside the cell that he injected was alive. In stating that viruses need living cells in order to replicate, Rivers was contradicting many workers in the field, including Simon Flexner, that was his boss, who was the director at that time of the Rockefeller Institute, who claimed to have isolated and cultivated the polio virus in a cell-free medium. Now you remember that Flexner is the guy that cut out the spinal cord in Audio CD1 of a human being that died of polio supposedly, and he cut a hole in the head of the monkey, and then he injected this liquid spinal cord into the monkey's brain, and the monkey became paralyzed. Had nothing, as you now know, to do with human polio or how it was gotten or caught or whatever you want to believe in it. Let me jump down here to this one statement here. It says, although viruses were small, size should not prevent their cultivation. Viruses were not particularly delicate or susceptible to destruction during laboratory procedures, nor had any viruses been found multiplying free in nature. And that, of course, is because, as you now know, viruses are not alive. They are poisons made in a laboratory through the most bizarre methods of scientific, bizarre stuff that you can just think of. Now, here's an example, and you can even read this yourself. You can look up a high-speed vacuum centrifuge suitable for the study of filterable viruses by Johannes H. Bauer, MD, and Edward G. Pickles, PhD. Quote, a series of experiments was carried out with a view to studying the operating characteristics of the centrifuge as well as the behavior of yellow fever virus in an intense centrifugal field. In most of these, a neurotoxin strain of the virus derived from mouse brain was used. A better source than that derived from infected monkeys. Quote, again, a 20% mouse brain suspension was prepared by grinding finely 15 mouse brains in a mortar, that's a bowl, and suspending them in 25 cc of normal monkey serum. Folks, this is just one example of these experiments of what these sick bastards are doing. And then they're telling you that your diseases are caused by these viruses that are poisons that they create in a laboratory by killing animals, making them sick, cutting them up, injecting them into humans or into other animals to make them sick, and then telling you that's how you got sick in the first place. Somebody's sick, all right, but it isn't us. Now, let me give you some more examples here. 1885, Louis Pasteur gave the first rabies vaccine to a boy, Joseph Meister. He injected the boy with aged spinal cord allegedly infected with rabies. In 1892, we go to our friend Dmitry Ivanovsky, injected sap made from diseased tobacco leaves into a young healthy plant. 1897, again Martinez Bejernek, with artificial injection of fresh extracted sap or with inoculation with diseased tissue, the disease may reach a higher stage of intensity. 1908, Karl Landsteiner said he produced polio in monkeys by injecting the monkeys with tissue taken from the spine of a boy killed by the disease. In 1909, Peyton Roos prepared a cell-free filtrate from a malignant sarcoma isolated from a chicken leg and injecting it into a healthy chicken. Here's more proof. Contributions to the pathology of experimental virus encephalitis by Simon Flexner and Harold A. Moss. December 1924. Quote, number of specimens of this virus having been derived from inoculations either of nasal secretions or of brain substance taken at autopsy. We secured portions of the brain or the entire organ as removed at autopsy for the purpose of inoculating animals. 2 rabbits were injected with virus taken from fresh brain. Here's 1929, Thomas Rivers' observations concerning the persistence of living cells, page 182. Vaccine virus, Levitit is the fellow's name. Neurovaccine was injected into the testicles of a rabbit. The testicles were removed, made into a fluid, and used as a vaccine. Time magazine, July 16, 1934. Infected monkeys supplied the material for the vaccine. They removed the spinal cords which contained the virus of the disease. 1935, Literary Digest in July. Paralysis stalks North Carolina. Doctors Brody and Parks. The vaccine is made from the crushed cords of rhesus monkeys infected with the disease. That's when they infected the disease in them and the monkeys died. 1939, Dr. Charles Armstrong of the United States Public Health Service gave white mice poliovirus. It came from brain and spinal cord of a young man who had died of polio in Lansing, Michigan. 1941, J.F. Kessel experimented with dead people, took feces from the dead and injected it into living animals. Folks, are these people sick? They're insane. And here is Howard A. Howe, who pushed the virus lies in the major magazines in 1951 in his second attacks of poliomyelitis. Page 147. A wide variety of virus strains were used, including 4 different human stools. 1947, John Enders ground up the spinal cord of a boy who died of polio. 1948, Isabel Morgan chemically inactivated virus from monkey spinal cords, said she induced immunity when injected into monkeys. 1952, the source book for high school students from the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. It has been found that animals could be infected by introducing infectious material into their blood. Time magazine, March 29, 1954. Polio vaccine contents. Each monkey is anesthetized with ether. A surgeon removes the kidneys. Technicians cut kidneys into tiny pieces. Tissues go into glass bottles. Then mixed with Formula 199, virus is added. And they don't tell you what the virus is, but we can now get a good idea that it had to be some kind of ground up spinal cord or brain tissue that these people made sick in the first place. 12/11/1954. This is our man who says he grew the virus, John Enders. The virus consisted of suspension of infected mouse brain. And here in 1974, in a book, Viruses by David Locke, he says in the early 1900s, the idea of a filterable, invisible agents as a cause of disease was very much in vogue. It became fashionable to pass infectious material through a filter. If it was infectious, then the investigator had discovered a new virus. Now you understand where different strains come from, folks. This whole thing has been going on for 100 years. And this is why the promotion of the lie that viruses are living agents that cause disease is accepted by about 98% of the population, because it's what we're brainwashed with. This here quote is from a book called The Story Behind the Polio Vaccine. This was written by the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. Remember, these are the group, the March of Dimes people, who financed and spent all the money for the field trial and paid everybody to research their virus in their laboratories. It was written in late 1953 or early 1954, right before the field trial. And on page 3, this is what they said. This is what they told the people. It was known that the cause of the disease was a virus. The scientists were not sure how the virus entered the body nor where it came from. The virus had been found in many places, in some insect sewage, in a well in Sweden. I mean, boy, that's really a trip. Now you know what they're talking about. The virus they're talking about is the poison that they made in a laboratory. Then they go on to say in 1949, Dr. John Enders found a way to grow poliovirus in non-nervous tissue kept alive in flasks and test tubes. The key there is that the tissue was kept alive, not the virus poison. This is their trick. This is how they lie to people. Then she says Dr. Dorothy Horstman found poliovirus circulating for brief periods in the blood of monkeys. They put the word brief in there because they never found any antibodies circulating in the blood of anything. It's another lie that they're doing. Here's the best part. They actually asked the question on page 6 and answered it. What are antibodies? No scientist can say exactly. And it says, how do antibodies protect? Well, no one can say precisely, but in some manner they appear to keep the virus from doing harm to body cells. And if, as a growing body of research seems to suggest, poliovirus appears in the blood of those infected, one way to prevent paralysis might be to build up antibody levels to attack the virus in the blood before it has a chance to get to the nervous system. Folks, this is how they protect themselves. They're telling everyone in the major media that these antibodies attack viruses, and here they're admitting in their own little booklets they don't even know what it is, because they probably don't exist either, because no one's ever seen a live antibody attack a live virus. It's absolute fraud. Now I have in front of me a picture of a virus, like you see in your books. You can Google any picture of a virus, just don't get the colored ones because those are frauds. Those are simply artist's conceptions. It has to be black and white. And you'll see the little specks. And here's what it says. This is from 1956. It's about the polio virus, and it says, this is the crippler, the polio virus. Each fuzzy white spear is an individual virus of the Mahoney strain of type 1. Here they are magnified 100,000 times under the powerful electron microscope. You now know that what they're talking about is dead material, and nobody ever questioned what was that material in the background. What was it? Well, we know now what it is. It's monkey brains, monkey spinal cords, human spinal cords, anything that's dead, centrifuged, and put under an electron microscope. Again, this is your proof of this whole fraud of a living virus causing human disease. So let me recap this. The centrifuge is a high-speed rotating machine which separates the particles. What does that have to do with the vaccines? This is the secret they don't want you to know. They first make an animal sick in the laboratory by injecting it with some type of poison. When the animal gets infected, they cut out the organ or tissue that is infected. They mince it up, place it in a centrifuge. The centrifuge separates the liquid, diseased material from the solid. The sediment is called the virus, which you now know the real definition means poison. Then they take the sediment and place it under the electron microscope. With a magnification of, say, 70,000 times, they see little white specks they call a virus. Then they inject that poison disease material, or virus, into a healthy rabbit or guinea pig. Its legs become paralyzed. And then they lie to you and call this disease material alive and say this is what makes you naturally get sick by coughing, sneezing, touching, etc. The only way their virus causes disease is if they inject it into a living body. No one gets sick, no human gets sick naturally by injecting disease material into their body, of course, unless you're taking their vaccines. So in other words, these so-called scientists take diseased tissues and organs, like crushed spinal cords, minced up infected monkey, mouse, and squirrel brains, mouse and rabbit testicles, human feces, ox blood, pus, and nasal discharge, coughed up mucus, and mince that rotten, decomposed poison, then spin it in a centrifuge machine which separates the liquid from the solid, and they call the sediment a virus. This dead material, human waste, poisonous sediment, is then placed under an electron microscope which only sees objects that are dead. Then they look at the particles, the little white spots that they give the name pellets to, and say that this is what causes people to get sick. Again, the only way their virus, with their made-up definition, can cause disease, disability, or death is if you're injected with it. Humans, plants, and animals do not get sick naturally by injecting rotten, decomposing poison into their body. Is this what they taught you in school? Is this what the media tells you when they print their stories of people catching illnesses and list free vaccination clinics for you to inject this poison into your kids or yourself? Is this what those liars at the World Health Organization and the CDC tell you when they declare pandemics like the one for the swine flu? It's all lies and the biggest health hoax in medical history. Now you should realize how they predict a new strain of flu virus every year. They make it themselves. The bottom line, the virus is the vaccine, and the vaccine is the virus. They are the one and the same. In other future audios that I do, I'm going to give you some quotes from some of the healthologist experts as to the real cause of most diseases. It'll be interesting. So thanks again for listening, and be sure to share this with anyone who will listen to you, because we don't want to rock the vaccination boat. We want to sink it. And we will do that when we all get together and educate as many people as we can. Thank you.
Folks, I'm going to tell you, there's no doubt in my mind today that these people were not part of the population exposure demand. People with Bill Gates, Paul Offit, carrying it on. But this is Jim Dandy, exposing medical myths one at a time. And tomorrow, I'm going to post my CD with my conversation with Paul Offit.